And it felt like the scriptures had sent me these people, these heroes, to carry me through this really, really hard time.
You know, taking care of him and that time was completely and utterly overwhelming and the greatest privilege of my life. And I wish I were doing it now.
They learn how to think about others. They learn how to see others through the eyes of the Savior.
Hello and welcome to Latter-day Profiles. I'm Brian Howard. We're here at the LDS Motion Picture Studio in Provo, Utah. And joining me today is Lisa Valentine Clark. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you could come. You know, we've tried to get you here, but we book a day and then it never works on our schedule. So I'm so happy you could make it. You've got lots of things going on. You know, people recognize Lisa, of course. They've seen her on BYUtv before with Random Acts or on the radio, the Lisa Show, now a podcast, been on BYUradio. One of my favorites. We watched this one at home with our family once I was engaged, which you were heavily involved in, is both acting and helping to produce that, if I understand right. So lots of things. And of course, who can forget the Chat Books commercial, one of my favorites of the time. So lots of good stuff out there. So let's talk a little bit about your family. Sounds like as I was reading up about your family growing up, a very, creative family. Was it competitive, creative, or was it just everybody loved each other?
Yeah, no, we love each other. We still do. But all of my brothers and sisters and I, we just were raised by two very creative parents and who just gave us the crazy notion that you can just kind of try anything.
Mm-hmm. So was it ever competitive? I know you got, he's a brother, right? Guitarist, Maroon 5. You got a sister who's into, creative stuff as well.
She's a fashion designer.
Yeah, fashion designer. So supportive, it's like, oh, you guys are great, or how'd that work out?
Oh, yeah, it's so interesting because we're all still very close. My oldest brother, Chris, is a successful physician, but he's also an artist as well and does just amazing pieces of art, painting, and multimedia. And then there's me, and then my sister, Gina, who works in education with charter schools, but she is also a really great seamstress and designer herself. And then my little brother, James, is the lead guitarist in Maroon 5, and then my youngest sister Amanda she was on Project Runway for several seasons, and she is a stylist for like 21 Pilots, and we all just kind of do different creative things and really support each other. They're amazing people.
Yeah, that underachieving family, right?
Well, apparently we all need a lot of attention, so I'll just say it.
That's good. Well, you ended up, I know you did some stuff in high school, but you ended up at BYU and doing a comedy troupe. What drew you to that? Was it something that's kind of a natural gravitation or an invitation from someone?
Well, I was doing improv with some people that I had just met as soon as I got to BYU, and the improv games were really fun. I'd always done theater and things like that in high school, and just thought it was fun. But making up stuff and finding funny people and laughing with funny people, that's what drew me to it. And so I auditioned for the Garens comedy troupe, and they do sketch and improv, and just loved it and met some really incredible people there.
No, I think about this, for improv, and you've done a lot of that. You've done some different shows with improv. I'm thinking someone would say something, I'd probably just have a blank stare. Do you practice, think about just creatively, okay, if this is said, I have somewhere to go with this?
Yeah, it's really tricky because you can't overthink it. And that's the whole thing. You got to be in the moment and just accept what comes in the moment and play and just kind of go with the flow in that. And so, when you're with people that you trust, who you're just losing time with, that's the best feeling ever.
Yeah. And good for you guys, it turns out funny, which is
it's always a bonus.
For the rest of us, like say something, everyone just crickets to go as well. Let's talk about you and your husband Chris. You met him at BYU. It sounds like you were both into acting, theater, all that kind of stuff. Was that the initial attraction or just funniness? Was that what caught you?
Well, he was had just gotten back from his LDS mission in Finland, and was on an acting scholarship. I was an English major. He decided to major in English because it was more practical, which we really did think that at the time. And we were in an English society, that was the English Club play that did a production of Mysteries Creation, which were scenes out of the Bible. So, of course, funny material right from the get-go. And he got cast as Satan, the big role, coveted, really spoke to his talents. I got cast as a chicken on Noah's Ark, and we made each other laugh. We had a really good time. Everyone was drawn to Christopher, though. I mean, everybody wanted to hang out with him. He's the life of the party.
Yeah. So as far as the pursuit goes, did he ask you out first? Did you go and talk to him? How did that work out?
Well, that's funny. We were friends for about a year and just kind of hung out, for about a year. I might have dated his best friend for a little while. We're all still friends. It's fine. And then after a few months, he finally asked me out on a date without my roommate Rebecca coming with us. That's when I knew things were getting really
actually
serious.
Official. No.
Yeah, because we all just kind of hung out. You know how it is. And I didn't think he liked me. And then when he did, boy, everything changed like it does.
Well, that's great. Well, you're both really into, all these kind of things. When family comes, it had to be interesting because you start having children.
Yeah.
And how did you decide who's going to do what? And when did he start? You started working at Utah Valley, but he's also directing plays and you're involved in things.
Well, it just was crazy busy for a long time, but always fun. He and I always from the get-go were just each other's biggest cheerleaders and just wanted the other person to live the very best life that they wanted to. For me, I wanted a lot of kids. I wanted to be able to primarily stay home with them, and I wanted to do my creative pursuits. He was managing a Barnes & Noble, making a great salary, and just kind of hated life and was like, I just really want to direct, and I want to direct Shakespeare. And I was like, okay, let's do that. And so we took at the time, we had 2 little small boys and moved to Exeter, England, and where he got a master's in staging Shakespeare, had a blast. Came home, and then he got a PhD in theater and education and leadership so that he could direct, and we had 5 kids. He directed plays. I did improv after taking the kids home in bed with the Thrillionaries comedy troupe, and we did improv as theater, so in different theatrical styles like Oscar Wilde or Shakespeare or, John Hughes or Western. Anyway, lots of different kinds of styles. And so we were both, pursuing that, and it was the most fun.
Thinking about that, and you probably get asked this because, you can kind of go the safe route, making the money, Barnes & Noble or whatever the job is. But this is more like a passion, right? And I imagine I know the answer, but worth the risk to take the passion route, even though it might not be the safe route.
Yeah, I think when you're drawn to something and you think about the totality of your life and what you're going to what it all means. You want to use your talents, and we certainly did, and you want to follow your passions, and I think if you work hard enough, and Christopher certainly did, and are really like prayerful and mindful about it, you can find a way to support a family, and he did. And his whole attitude was like, well, if I have to teach full-time and direct plays at night for money so that we can have 5 kids or whatever, I'll do it. Like he never had one job, you know what I mean? He always had multiple jobs. But he thought, as long as I love it, if I love it, and if I feel like I'm really contributing something and using my talents instead of just doing something that, I'm not suited for or that anyone could do or whatever, then it changes the attitude of my life. And we both thought that, and we were both, a team in that. So there was never really any other question of like, will you be an accountant? He is not good at math. He will not be an accountant, and a couple of times, he would be like, I wish that, wouldn't it be great if you and I loved something that made money? Wouldn't that be great? Yes, it would be, but that's not us. Right? That's fine.
Well, an important thing I think you brought up is that we're both on board, and that's, I think, makes it workable, right? If you're both on board and willing to give what it takes, then it's going to work out, even though I live on love, right, instead of money.
Get through.
So, you did write a book about mothering, and, you did like Pretty Darn Funny, some other things are based on, relationships, being a mom and that kind of thing, mostly drawn off of experiences, maybe some, you make fun of them, maybe a little more exaggerated, but is that where it comes from, is your experience as a mom?
Yeah, I just think that day in, day out of having kids, especially, we have 5 very different children with strong, independent, personalities. And I think every mom can relate to the feeling where something happens and you're like, did anybody else see that? Like, that's so ridiculous. No one will ever believe me that this really, really happened. And I just found myself having a lot of those experiences. And, I think that great art comes out of great love, and I love being a mom. I love being my kid's mom. And so funny stories come out of it and good life lessons. And it's just what I know.
Why did you decide to write a book? What was the thought behind that?
I was approached by someone at Deseret Book of, hey, have you ever thought about this? And I was like, well, I was an English major. I've always wanted to do this. And she really encouraged me and mentored me through the process. And I loved it. And turns out I had some things to say. So it was a great experience. But I wrote the book when my oldest was 15 and my oldest now is 24. So it's been a while, and I've got new stories.
Time for a revision.
Well, I don't know if it'll be as funny.
Goodbye. So, all those things I thought, well, let's change those now.
Yeah,
right?
well,
yeah, that's funny. So let's talk about your husband. For those who aren't familiar with the story, then your husband, Chris, you found out he had ALS, which, devastating news, obviously.
Yeah, it's the worst disease ever.
I was thinking about that as I know a lot of people become, caregivers, and you did that.
I did.
Tell me about that experience, because especially with ALS, it's not constant. It continues to change almost daily, right, as you're working with someone.
Yeah, every day is the best it's ever going to be, and 100% it's always going to get worse. So, ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease is the worst disease. The average life expectancy is 2 to 5 years. Basically, it started with like a little twitch in his right leg, and 4.5 years later, he unfortunately passed away from it. Without being able to move or speak. So a lot of change in 4.5 years. And I learned how to be, a caregiver in a different way, for him. And, taking care of him. And that time was completely and utterly overwhelming and the greatest privilege of my life. And I wish I were doing it now.
I've talked to people who've been caregivers like that. And it's this mixed emotion, because you love that person so much, but it's so hard.
It's so hard to see your favorite person slowly lose the ability to play the piano, walk, talk, feed themselves. It's very devastating.
Well, as I understand, Chris, a humorist, to the end, and he used humor a lot to kind of lighten the situation. That could be a really heavy load. How did that work? Or, humor would just chit chat, make fun, jokes?
Well, it's just who he is. It's just how our family functions, of just laughing and just looking for funny. He's just who he is. Still pulling pranks on his kids, like when he was in his wheelchair, and he could move his neck a little bit, and so the computer would speak to him kind of like a Stephen Hawking sort of setup situation, and he would say things in public to embarrass his kids, like, help, I don't know this person, and the kids would be like, Dad, stop, or like just, teasing them, and just using it just to continue to be a good husband and father and friend, and, literally in front of a screen all the time. So sending funny videos to his friends, and just really still participating as much as he can. And his whole attitude was, not to, I'm going to make, this situation funny. It was, I'm going to maintain who I am for as long as I can. I'm going to use all this technology and everything. I am still the same person stuck inside this crippling body. So I just want to use all this technology and adaptive equipment to continue to be who I am. So it wasn't like he suddenly became super funny or whatever. He was always the funniest person in any room. But it was nice that we were able to have the luxury of adaptive equipment and of physical therapists and aides and things who could help increase his quality of life so that he could maintain that for as long as he did.
Yeah, still be fun, but new and creative ways to show the same person inside.
And to give other people around him permission to laugh about it too. My voice sounds weird, so it sounds like Frankenstein, so I'm going to make a viral video about Frankenstein where I dress up like Frankenstein, because this is funny, because this is so dumb, you guys. This disease is the worst and the least interesting thing about him, right? Like, it's who he, being able to see him for who he was the real gift he gave us permission to have, so.
Tell me about, your faith through all this, because that's one of the things, we all know that bad things happen to great people, to really good people, but yet we have to, figure out how to evaluate that in our lives and make sense of it. How about for you, as far as faith building and working through a really tough situation?
Yeah, it's so tough. there's so many different levels to that question, right? The great thing was that Christopher and I were coming from a place of, we had been through other things, and we had been through other faith crises and horrible, difficult situations and hard things that we started off on this sort of ALS journey, if you will, from a place of great strength. Not, we didn't have to, oh my gosh, hurry up and find out what is it we believe and what do we really think. Like, we knew, we were like, ooh, this is going to be so much harder than we can anticipate, which turned out to be true. The great thing about Christopher, and this really helped my faith journey too, is that after about like the first year, I think the first year was a lot of shock and trauma and there's so much to learn. And we had to completely change our house. Our relationships with everybody changed. Our lives and our focus completely changed. So everything was uprooted. And so once that sort of settled down after the first year, and also there was a lot of optimism too, of like, well, maybe they'll find a cure. And I laugh because it's like, they still haven't found one. They haven't done anything. And when I say they, I just mean, the researchers and this is such an overwhelming thing. And so your brain can't really hold it for a while. And after that sort of settled down and we were able to really consider what it really means and come to terms with, oh, this is how he is going to die. This is his life story. Christopher's great gift to us was he had a great confidence that this was the plan all along, that this was God's plan for him. This wasn't plan B or the plan had went wrong and now we've got to figure out what to do. That this was nothing that he did or caused. It's this rare terminal disease. It's just so random that he's obviously I'm at peace with that. I agreed to this and this is my plan. And so I'm going to do it. And we're just going to make the best of it. It took me a little bit longer to get there because I was like, this doesn't seem like a really great plan. And it doesn't seem like something I would agree to. So I respectfully disagree, and for me, it was like, I know that horrible things happen to good people. And so I'm not going to, beat myself up. But at the same time, I kept thinking, well, if your suffering is for me to learn something, I'm going to feel really horrible about this because this is real suffering. And so there was a lot of turmoil with that. He had such just a calmness and a stillness about him the whole time, though, that the real struggle, I think, came when we didn't have that in our home anymore. And he wasn't there with that presence and that peace for us to go, okay, now it's quiet. Yeah. It's done. It's settled. And what I have learned, it's impossible for me to completely relate to you in this setting right now. Right. All of the things, but it did strengthen my faith in the sense that it changed the way that I view the purpose of life. And people say this all the time, and I know it's cliche, but the things that matter and what don't. And it really focused and fine-tuned our family and me specifically, our focus on, it's just all about love. It's all about relationships. I saw the totality of Christopher's life and what it meant and the dumb stuff and the awesome stuff and the meaningful stuff. And it's the biggest gift. And being able to share my life with him for 25 years was such a gift. And what I've learned is that we are here to learn how to love, and we are here how to learn how to have an open heart and to have a broken heart, and a contrite spirit comes with a price. And we all have to pay that price in some way, and we can do it with the Savior's help. And that's the only way we can do it. Yeah. But some people, there is a resistance to that, and I think I have a lot more empathy for people who maybe don't, maybe wholeheartedly, welcome that in and maybe fight it in different and unhealthy ways. I have a lot more empathy for that, and I realize that we're just here to help each other out. And our relationships with each other and our interactions with each other are what matters the most. And everything else is just kind of dressing for their lives.
Biggest challenges
it is. And I just feel like it's just a boiled down version of Christ's message, right? Yeah. Which is of love and come unto me. It really is kind of more simple, but I just know it more deeply now, I think, in my bones. If I feel like, yep, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, hard to get that big picture in our heads, but if we can grasp onto it, at least somewhat, then it certainly helps us move through difficult things like that. Well, I know, after his passing, I'm sure it left a hole, and then, you did take on a project once I was engaged. Yeah. So that was the first big project really after that. Yeah. Why did you decide to take that on? Was it something you've been working on for a while? And was it difficult to take that on?
Yeah, we had been talking about it, I think, since once a Beehive came out. Yeah. We'd been talking about it, and COVID happened, and then I was a full-time caregiver, and I was hoping that it would be for a long time. Mm-hmm. So it was never like, oh, well then, after Chris passes away, we'll do this or whatever. I was always like, I'm a caregiver now, and I hope I'm a caregiver forever, and then he never dies, so I probably can never do any other creative project, and I don't care. But the people that I made this movie with are some of my very, very best friends, and so they understood the situation, and so the scripts have gone through, different versions and things like that. And so a few months after Christopher had passed away, I was talking to my friends and saying, so where is it? What are you going to do? And they said, well, we really want to do it. And we have this little window with everyone's schedules and with the funding. A million things have to go right for an independent movie to be made, like a million. And there was a little window, and they said, what do you think? And I said, well, I can't do it because I'm broken and I can't laugh and nothing's funny and I hate everything, because I really did. And it just my dear friend Haley Smith, who's a producer on it and who plays Holly Valentine in the movie, she was like, oh, that's stupid Lisa. That's not true. And come and do this. Come be with your friends. We're going to film in Hawaii. McLean Nelson, who's the director, another one of my dearest friends, was like, let's just be together. It's been COVID. Chris died. We couldn't have a funeral. Let's just all just be together. And if we make a movie, great, if it works out. And so it was really the only reason why I was able to do that was because they were so good and so kind. And everyone in the cast and the crew, we were just like a big family. We were so honored to be together. The fact that we all had negative COVID tests and were able to go there, and I was able to bring some of my children to work on the film together. It was just magical, and I just really felt like, this is what Christopher was like, don't shrivel up and die in a corner after I'm gone, live life and go do creative projects and, be happy and always. And I was like, don't tell me what to do. I'll grieve how I want to. But it's so Chris Clark just to be like, I just knew he would be so happy that his friends were all together cheering up his family. And it was a real, for me, that movie forever and always will just be such a great, expression of the love that my friends gave me.
Yeah, almost a therapeutic experience.
Gift,
yeah,
for
very,
sure.
Very, very great. Yeah. Well, it's a fun movie. I watched it back during COVID, back when you couldn't go anywhere, so we purchased and watched online. Kids had a good time with that one. So thank you for doing that. Now you're you've been doing stuff with BYUradio, but now you're doing a podcast, The Leisha Show. We only have a couple minutes left, but I want people to be aware, if they haven't heard it before, what goes on. By the way, I listened to an episode, there's the Mother's Day episode. I have a good friend, Jeanette Bennett's a good friend I went to college with. So very fun. You're talking about the love-hate relationship with Mother's Day. But what goes on the Lisa Show podcast?
Yeah, so the Lisa Show podcast is a weekly podcast, and really we're just bringing people together. It's all about connection and laughing at all of the craziness of life. Our failures and successes, we're all making it up as we go along. So this is not your podcast about just do these 5 things and you'll have a successful. It's what have you tried? What can I do? It's just about connecting people together. I feel like now, because of social media and the way that our world, we're also, and especially COVID, we're all disconnected. And so this is a place to come together, to laugh and to share ideas and to really feel like we're all in this together.
So a weekly podcast right now, right?
Weekly podcast that you can download for free on the BYUradio app, or you can get it on Spotify or, iTunes, Apple Play, all that.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, I do just a little bit longer. Anything in the works for you that you're planning on? So you got the radio show, you're doing a movie. Anything new coming down the pike that you're thinking about?
Yeah, there's always something, my kids are all kind of going off in different directions. And so this is kind of a new phase of life for me and trying to stay connected with them. But yeah, the podcast, The Lisa Show, love that. Working on some other scripts with friends to do some movies and doing a lot of writing. Writing has been really therapeutic for me. So what it turns into, I'm not quite sure yet, but looking to do a little bit more TV too, and pitch a lot of ideas, because that's how it goes, and just kind of go with the flow of life and see what happens.
I'm assuming funny, right? Not a serious drama. No murders.
I don't think it's in me. I think life is ridiculous. So.
Well, Lisa, it's been such a pleasure. I encourage anybody, check out the show, The Lisa Show, check out the podcast. And also, if you haven't seen the movie, Once I Was Engaged, definitely check that out and look for more things in the future. Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time. It's just a pleasure to get to know you.